Chapter 1. The Watchmaker's Legacy. The fog had crept inland from the Oresund, a heavy pall that drowned the narrow streets in a colorless blur. Lamps along Nyhavn's harbor front glowed faintly in the gray, casting watery halos over the slick cobblestones. February in Copenhagen had always felt hollow, like a city caught between seasons. But that year, 2002, the air carried an unease neither snow nor rain could wash away. Henrik Lovin, an antique collector of the sort people whispered about but rarely invited to dinner, adjusted his scarf against the damp and pushed open the door of the little shop on Holman's Canal. The bell above the frame rattled feebly, as if reluctant to announce him. The shop had been closed for months, shuttered after the death of old watchmaker Rasmussen. Rumors said Rasmussen had hung himself in the back room, though Henrik knew better. He had seen the photographs, the body twisted in a way that rope alone could not explain. Still, collectors thrived on rumor, and Henrik could not resist when the estate offered him first choice among the remnants. Dust had settled like pale ash over everything. The glass cases, the shelves sagging with clocks, the velvet tray where pocket watches once gleamed. Timepieces still ticked here and there, weakly, out of step with each other, like a chorus of failing hearts. Henrik closed the door behind him. The silence that followed was so complete, it seemed the clocks were only miming their rhythm. He pulled his gloves off, revealing long, pale fingers, and stepped toward the back room. That was where Rasmussen had kept the rarities, the unsellable, the unspeakable. Michelle Hartmann arrived 2 days later. A reluctant guest in a city she claimed smelled perpetually of wet stones and old beer. She was a museum curator from Berlin, on loan to the Danish National Museum for a temporary exhibit about European horology. She had expected to spend her weeks cataloging pendulums and carriage clocks, but Henrik had intercepted her at the museum steps with a proposition. Rasmussen's collection is in disarray, he had told her in his oddly clipped Danish accented German. You have the expertise. I have the access. Together, perhaps we might find what should not be lost. Michelle had not trusted him. His eyes carried the damp sheen of someone who had spent too much time underground, and his smile was less a gesture than an accident. But the museum had urged her to cooperate. Henrik had donated before, and his name still carried weight among collectors. And so, on a wet Saturday evening, she followed him into the shuttered shop. "Smells like mildew," she muttered, wiping her boots on the mat. Henrik only nodded. Everything worth keeping smells of mildew. Age has its fragrance. Michelle resisted the urge to roll her eyes. She had no patience for the romance of decay. Her work was preservation, not worship. The back room was smaller than she expected, a narrow space lined with wooden drawers and cabinets. At the center stood a single display case, locked, its glass clouded with condensation. Inside rested one item, a wristwatch with a cracked leather strap, its face so black it swallowed the lamplight. Rasmussen called it Erverket's barn, Henrik said softly. The child of the mechanism. Michelle leaned closer. The watch was unremarkable at first glance, save for its peculiar darkness. Not the absence of light, but something deeper, as though the face were a window into unlit depths. Around the bezel, faint engravings coiled, symbols not quite runes, not quite letters. "Where did it come from?" she asked. Henrik's lips tightened. The records say it was found in a shipwreck off Bornholm. 18th century, perhaps earlier. Rasmussen never traced its maker. He insisted it was pre-industrial. A curiosity, yes, but one he guarded fiercely. Michelle tapped the glass. The second hand did not move. "It's broken," she said. Henrik gave a humorless laugh. If only, that night, the watch returned to Henrik's flat with them. Michelle objected. Protocol-dictated artifacts remain in institutional custody, but Henrik waved her concerns away. Temporary housing, he insisted. Safer here than in a museum storeroom where interns might paw at it. His flat was above a shuttered bakery in Christianshavn, the air thick with the ghosts of yeast and flour. He set the watch on his desk, beside a half-drained bottle of aquavit, and gestured for Michelle to sit. She remained standing. "What exactly do you want from me?" Henrik studied the watch as though afraid to meet her eyes. "Rasmussen's death unsettled me. He was careful, but in his final months he changed. Distracted, forgetful." He said the watch spoke to him. Michelle let out a short laugh. "You believe him?" "I believe he believed it." The watch ticked. Both froze. It was faint but undeniable, a single, measured tick-tick-tick. The second hand, which had lain inert in the shop, now advanced steadily. Michelle took a step back. "Did you wind it?" Henrik shook his head. The watch ticked faster. By midnight the sound filled the flat, louder than any watch ought to be. Michelle covered her ears. "It's impossible," she muttered. "There's no mainspring, no tension. How?" Henrik reached for it. His fingers hovered, trembling, before he finally seized the leather strap. The ticking ceased. Silence. Michelle exhaled, but Henrik did not let go. His knuckles whitened as though the watch resisted him. For a moment his face twisted. Pain, rapture, she could not tell. Then he slid it onto his wrist. "Stop!" Michelle lunged forward, but too late. The clasp clicked shut. Henrik gasped. His pupils dilated until his eyes were black pools. His body swayed as if tugged by invisible strings. When he spoke, his voice was his own and not his own, layered with an echo that seemed to come from deep within the walls. "Time," he whispered. "Time is the vessel. Time is the chain." Michelle staggered back, heart hammering. "Take it off." Henrik smiled thinly. "I cannot." The days that followed blurred in a haze of sleeplessness. Michelle checked on him daily, torn between duty and dread. Henrik no longer seemed entirely present. His movements were too precise, his words clipped like the ticking of gears. He stopped eating, stopped drinking, yet never appeared weak. At night, she heard him pacing, muttering in languages she did not recognize. Once, when she tried to pull the watch from his wrist as he slept, the strap seared her fingers, leaving blistered welts. She began to notice changes in the city, too. Clocks in public squares fell out of sync, their hands stuttering or spinning wildly. Bystanders complained of losing hours, of waking in strange places with no memory of how they arrived. Always, the ticking followed her, echoing in alleys, whispering in museum halls. On the seventh day, Michelle returned to the flat, determined to end it. She carried with her a hammer, wrapped in cloth, stolen from the museum's restoration workshop. Henrik sat in darkness, the watch glowing faintly on his wrist, its black face pulsing like an ember. "You look tired," he said without turning. "I am," Michelle admitted. "Give it to me." Henrik huckled. "It doesn't work that way." She raised the hammer. His hand shot out unnaturally fast, gripping her wrist. His skin was ice cold. "Destroy it, and you destroy me." Michelle hesitated. His eyes glimmered, desperate, pleading. For a moment she saw the man beneath the possession, the lonely collector who had only wanted to touch history. Then the watch ticked once, sharply, and Henrik's expression hardened into something mechanical. "You belong to it now, too," he said. The hammer slipped from her hand. The next morning, the fog was thicker than ever, muffling the city in gray silence. Michelle stood on Nipplesborough Bridge, staring down into the black water, the welts on her hand throbbing. She felt the ticking deep inside her chest now, as if her own heart had fallen into step with the watch. Behind her, Henrik's voice carried through the mist. "Time is not kept," he said. "It keeps us." Michelle did not turn. The watch ticked on. Chapter 2. The Gears Beneath the Skin. Copenhagen seemed wrong in March of 2002. The fog never burned off, and the streets echoed strangely, as though voices carried too far and died too suddenly. Michelle tried to lose herself in museum work, cataloging wooden clocks from rural Denmark, but her concentration splintered every time she glanced at her bandaged hand. The burn from the watch strap refused to heal. At night, she dreamed of ticking. Sometimes the sound became teeth chattering in her skull. Sometimes the rush of water inside a drowned ear. She woke with her sheets damp and the distinct sensation that someone had been sitting on her chest. Henrik did not dream anymore. He told her this one night, his face pale in the glow of a single desk lamp. "Dreams are wasted time," he said. "The watch removes them." Efficient. Michelle flinched at the word. He had begun to talk like that constantly, in mechanical terms, as though life were merely gears and springs. "Henrik, listen to yourself," she said. "This isn't efficient. It's unnatural. It's killing you." But Henrik only smiled, stroking the black dial with his fingertip. The watch ticked audibly, though no one but Michelle seemed to hear it. The city itself appeared to bend around Henrik. Michelle noticed it first on the metro. They were riding together toward Fredericksburg when she realized every commuter in their car had synchronized movements. Hands brushing hair at the same moment, knees crossing in mirrored rhythm. Even their breathing rose and fell in perfect unison. She grabbed Henrik's arm. "Do you see this? They are in alignment," he murmured, voice threaded with awe. "For once, the world keeps proper time." Michelle shivered. None of the passengers made eye contact. When the train stopped, they rose together like marionettes and filed silently onto the platform. She began researching in secret. By day, she worked at the museum. By night, she scoured Rasmussen's estate papers and old seafaring records. The watch's origin was murky, but fragments surfaced. A shipwreck in 1768, its crew missing, cargo intact. A journal entry from a customs officer describing a device of iron and onyx, humming with the sound of endless time. Rasmussen had annotated the margins in spidery script. Overket's barn. A parasite, not an invention. Michelle slammed the book shut. Parasite. The word chilled her more than any ghost story. One evening, she returned to Henrik's flat to find him dismantling every clock he owned. Gears, springs, pendulums lay strewn across the floor like the entrails of metallic animals. "They're obsolete," he said without looking up. "This," he raised his wrist, "is the only true mechanism. All others are crude imitations." "Henrik, stop this madness," Michelle pleaded, but he was no longer listening. His fingers moved with an inhuman precision, disassembling even the smallest watch without hesitation. His eyes gleamed as though a light burned behind them. When she reached out to touch his shoulder, she felt the faint vibration of ticking beneath his skin. That night, she dreamt of Rasmussen. He dangled from the ceiling by an invisible thread, body twitching like a pendulum. His eyes bulged black, and his mouth opened to spill out not words but the steady sound of gears grinding. Michelle woke, gasping, her ears ringing with phantom ticks. Her bandaged hand throbbed, and when she unwrapped it, she saw something impossible. The blisters had hardened into tiny ridges shaped like teeth of a gear. She screamed, but no one heard. By mid-March, rumors swept Copenhagen. People complained of lost hours, waking in unfamiliar places, missing entire days. The newspapers blamed power outages, mechanical faults in the city's clocks, even Y2K glitches delayed by bureaucratic oversight. But Michelle knew. The parasite was spreading. She tried to confront Henrik once more. She found him standing at his window, staring at the motionless street. "They are falling into rhythm," he whispered. "Soon the whole city will keep perfect time. No more waste. No more chaos." Michelle grabbed his arm. "You don't understand. If it controls them, it will consume them. Look at Rasmussen. He's dead." Henrik turned. His eyes were glassy, his smile mechanical. "Death is only a misalignment. The watch corrects it." Michelle recoiled. For the first time, she believed he might not be Henrik at all. The next evening, she made her decision. She would go back to the wreck records, find where the watch had come from, and return it. If it was dredged from the sea, then the sea would take it back. But as she gathered her notes, a sound froze her. Ticking, not from Henrik's wrist this time, from inside her own chest. Michelle staggered, clutching herself. Her heart thudded, then ticked, then thudded again. The parasite was moving. It wasn't just him. The watch had chosen her too. Chapter 3, Lost Hours. The bells of Vorfru Kirk rang at midnight, though Michelle knew it was not midnight. She had checked her watch, her real watch, a modern stainless steel Seiko, only minutes earlier. It read 10:47. Yet when the church bells cried out, the streets shifted. Lamps flickered. Cars that had been parked moments before were gone. Time was unraveling around her. She stood alone on Amagertor Square, damp air pressing clothes. The boutiques were shuttered, their glass dark. A few pedestrians drifted through the fog, but their faces blurred, as if the city itself had misfiled them. Michelle clutched her coat tighter, fingers trembling. Her chest ticked. The sound was not constant, but it came in jolts, 2 beats human, 1 beat mechanical. She hated it most when she was alone, because then she knew it was not Henrik, not Rasmussen, not the city. It was her. Henrik had stopped pretending. When Michelle visited his flat now, she found no trace of the collector she had met weeks ago. Books lay open on every surface, but the notes were not written in Danish, German, or any language she recognized. Symbols like fragments of cogs spiraled across the pages, repeating endlessly. He sat in the center of it all, back straight, eyes hollow. The watch glowed faintly, the black dial pulsing in rhythm with the gears she sometimes swore she heard turning behind the walls. "You're resisting," he told her without looking up. His voice was calm, measured. "It will hurt you more." Michelle swallowed. "You let it in." "I didn't. Choice is irrelevant. You touched it. It marked you. The watch seeks symmetry. It will not allow halves." He finally turned, and for a fleeting moment, she saw pity in his expression. Then it was gone. "I will help you when you're ready to surrender," he said. "Until then, the dissonance will consume you." Michelle left without replying, but the words clung like frost to her skin. At the museum, she threw herself into research. She bribed an archivist with smuggled chocolate to retrieve sealed papers from Rasmussen's effects. Among them, she found a letter dated 1987, scrawled in a frantic hand. "I have calculated the cycle. Every 134 years, the watch demands a new keeper. It burrows through the blood until the host is used up, then leaps to the nearest contact. I should have burned it when I had the chance. But how do you burn time itself?" Michelle's breath quickened. If Rasmussen had taken possession in 1968, then his end had come right on schedule. She remembered the photographs Henrik had shown her, the twisted body, the impossible angles. Now it was Henrik's turn, and hers. The hours began to slip. Michelle would set her alarm for 7, but when she opened her eyes, the clock read 10. She would start an email at noon and find herself staring at a completed message stamped 4:32. Once, she entered the museum's storage vault, and when she emerged, it was night. Colleagues noticed her distractedness, but said nothing. They too were losing hours. A janitor told her he had fallen asleep on the train and woken 3 stations beyond his stop, though he swore he had never closed his eyes. A receptionist wept when her daughter accused her of missing a birthday dinner. The whole city was being pulled into the watch's rhythm, whether they wore it or not. One night, Michelle wandered nigh Havn in the fog, watching the black water lap against the wooden piers. She had not meant to come there. Her feet had carried her without permission. The square was empty except for a figure at the end of the pier. Henrik. He stood with his back to her, staring into the water. His reflection quivered in the ripples, but the watch's reflection was absent, as though it refused to acknowledge itself. "You shouldn't follow me," he said without turning. "I didn't," Michelle whispered. "It brought me here." Henrik lågade softly. "Good. Then you're learning. Stop resisting, Michelle. The sooner you yield, the gentler it will be." She took a step closer. "What happens if I don't yield?" His shoulders lifted in a slow shrug. The watch doesn't tolerate fragments. It will grind you until you fit. Michelle's chest ticked in painful counterpoint. She clutched her ribs, gasping. Henrik finally faced her. His pupils had thinned into narrow lines, like the teeth of gears. He smiled, almost kindly. "It's already working," he said. She avoided him for days, but avoidance offered no relief. The ticking inside her body worsened. Her vision stuttered, skipping frames like a broken reel of film. Once she dropped a cup of coffee, only to watch it shatter before her fingers let go. Her reflection betrayed her too. In mirrors, she sometimes caught glimpses of herself, turning her head a fraction too late, or smiling faintly when she knew her mouth was still. The parasite was testing her edges, probing for weaknesses. In desperation, she called a priest. Father Lindholm, a kindly man in his 60s, agreed to meet her in the dim light of the museum chapel. She showed him her scarred hand, told him of the watch of Henrik, of Rasmussen's death. He listened patiently, but his expression remained careful, neutral. "Objects can carry evil," he said at last. "But what you describe sounds less like a demon and more like contagion. Can you help me?" Michelle begged. "I can pray." He placed his hands on her shoulders, murmuring Latin benedictions. For a moment, Michelle felt warmth, a reprieve from the cold mechanical pulse in her chest. She almost wept. Then the chapel's clock struck the hour. The sound was deafening, a roar of gears grinding. Father Lindholm staggered, clutching his ears. His prayers turned to screams. Blood trickled from his nose. Michelle fled, her heart ticking wildly, echoing the chapel bells long after she reached the street. Sleep abandoned her. She drifted through the days like a ghost, terrified to blink. Every sound became a tick, every shadow a gear turning. Finally, on a rain-lashed night, she returned to Henrik's flat. She found him sitting before the window again, staring into the storm. "You were right," she said, voice raw. "I can't fight it." Henrik turned slowly, eyes shining like polished steel. He rose and approached, extending his hand. "Then give it your time," he whispered. "Let wind you. Let make you whole." Michelle stared at the watch. Its face was blacker than the night, its ticking a perfect metronome. She felt her chest matching it, beat for beat. Her hand rose against her will. The strap opened like a mouth. Somewhere deep inside, a part of Michelle still screamed, but the watch did not care. The clasp snapped shut.